Okay, one more Switch video and I think I'll have it out of my system for a bit. Tell me, is the Nintendo Switch 9th gen or is it an 8th gen substitute? It might seem like a trifling matter, but the answer to this question, or at least Nintendo's answer to this question, will shed light on their next step. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, with its performance issues, which are more of a side effect of the series going open world than anything else, but let's not let something like the truth get in the way of hyperbole, have been seen as a canary in the coal mine that it's time for Nintendo to move on from the Switch. Now, I would flatly disagree with this, as the system is still absolutely printing money, and Nintendo should only move on from such a winner when sales do genuinely decline. For perspective, the Switch just passed the PS4 in lifetime sales, despite the PS4 having a 3.5-year head start. That is a resounding and enduring success. If anything, Nintendo should be trying to preserve this moment for as long as possible. Still, talk of a hardware transition is picking up, so it's something worth addressing at the very least. So the question remains, is the Switch a 9th gen platform, or is it a replacement 8th gen system? The Wii U had a 4.5-year run through 5 holiday seasons before Nintendo threw in the towel, and it can't be understated how big of an L this was. It took longer for the Wii U to match the Dreamcast's lifetime sales than the Dreamcast was on the market altogether. The Wii U was a bigger commercial flop than the system that ejected Sega from the hardware business, and arguably, it was only their Wii war chest that saved them. In the midst of such a monumental failure, it's easy to forget that the Wii U enjoyed what was once a reasonably normal hardware life cycle. That 4.5-year, 5-holiday run put it in the ballpark of respectable platforms like the Super NES and the original Xbox, and actually ahead of the Sega Master System and the Game Boy Advance. That's pretty damn good company. Now, there are a lot of moving parts here. Hardware life cycles and the expectations thereof are getting longer across the industry, so that kind of life cycle isn't nearly as normal in the 2010s as it was in the 90s and aughts, but it's a longer life than it arguably had any right having for performing worse commercially than the Dreamcast. In that scope, it's hard to call Switch a mere mid-generation substitute. It strikes me as odd, then, that the rollout of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series was taken by so many to be a signal that Nintendo absolutely must move on from the Switch. The Switch, which has been one of Nintendo's biggest high-point consoles ever, right up there with the Wii in terms of lifetime sales, and the Super NES in terms of content quality. Yes, it does chug under the weight of certain titles, but commercial performance is a much more important metric to determine the need for a generational shift than hardware showing a few gray hairs. Especially when it comes to Nintendo, and right now, there are no problems whatsoever. Every time it looks to be slowing down, a major release comes along and drives hardware sales all over again. You can criticize Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's hardware performance until you pass out. It all rings hollow in the face of its sales, which have been pretty solid if you haven't checked. It's only when major releases start failing to do that, you should begin to worry. And that was proverbial. If your console is actually sprouting gray hairs, you have a problem I'm not qualified to advise you on. So what does Nintendo's immediate hardware future look like? There's so much buzz around that they have to release something, right? Even putting aside the age-old reality that platform holders are always working on their next machine no matter how new the current one might be. There's just too much smoke for there to not be any fire at this point, and there's some recent history that can inform Nintendo's trajectory. In contrast to their broader policy on backward compatibility, they have none. Whenever they have an especially successful system, they tend to bring it along with its successor. The Game Boy and its DS lines enjoyed a single generation of backward compatibility throughout their entire collective lifespan. While it would be a stretch to call the GameCube especially successful, the Wii was fully backward compatible with it, and Nintendo made a strong point to keep the Wii U compatible with the Wii library that the gaming public was so deeply invested in at that point. Therefore, logic dictates whatever Nintendo makes next, the Switch will be deeply ingrained in its DNA, and they would probably honestly prefer not to have to release new hardware at all. The Switch Pro rumors make a lot of sense, even if they were largely debunked at the time by the launch of the OLED model. It's an easy concept to bring back, and Nintendo has all the incentive in the world to do exactly that. They could even carry out a staggered launch to make sure nobody gets left behind before they have a chance to get their hands on the new platform, by taking a page from Sony and Microsoft's playbooks while executing it in an orderly manner. Let's go on this journey together. E3 2023. This will undoubtedly be Nintendo's victory lap for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and should also be a parade of other upcoming projects that are long overdue for news, Metroid Prime 4, Pikmin 4, whatever the new Donkey Kong Country project is, and so on. The big news would be that these games, among others, a new fucking Wave Race, please, may I, are all lined up for holiday 2023 to coincide with the release of a genuine next-generation Switch, which I'll call the new Nintendo Switch for the purposes of this video, because I honestly wouldn't put it past them after the whole 3DS thing. And not to be too cryptic, but I actually do have another name in mind that is much more indicative of where the brand is right now and hopefully where it's going to stay for a very long time. But I won't use it here in hopes that it's actually the direction they're going in, and unfortunately copyright trolls are a thing. Maybe I'll revisit whether I was right or wrong in a future video when the identity of Nintendo's next hardware is known, be it in months or years. Based on the 2.2 video, those are fun videos to make. Anyway, I'll step into the presenter's shoes for this next bit. However, we all know that the hardware market has been a mess the last few years, and we don't want to leave anyone behind, so every release for new Nintendo Switch for its first year will also be compatible with the Switch systems you have right now. The games we have shown you represent that first wave. In addition, because we want the new Nintendo Switch going exclusively to gamers and not resellers, we are working with our retail partners to cross-reference console purchases with user data like Switch IDs and credit card numbers to enforce a one-per-customer basis until we are reasonably satisfied that the initial demand for hardware has been met. I'm still working on that video. We are launching new Nintendo Switch in November with a wave of new titles playable on the new Switch or the old that make the best use of the new hardware while maintaining compatibility. If you're a day-and-date kind of gamer, it will be a genuine new system experience with plenty of games to show off your new investment, and exactly how much of an improvement we're talking about. For those who take more of a wait-and-see approach or just run into trouble getting a system at launch, all of these games will still be right there for you to play on the Switch you have right now. Finally, in 2024, we will celebrate new Nintendo Switch's first birthday with an unprecedented second launch. This will be the first wave of software that is fully exclusive. We're not ready to talk about those games just yet, but we'll be back here at E3 next year to show you exactly what we have in store. Now, it was very difficult for me to not throw in some pie-in-the-sky stuff like ecosystem continuity because that's just how I'm inclined, but this is honestly the only way I can see Nintendo embracing a generational transition at this point in time. There are YouTubers out there saying that this would go against Nintendo's long-standing doctrine of being avant-garde with their design concepts, but those same people neglect to realize, or at least acknowledge, that we have the Wii U and all of its hard-learned lessons, as well as almost complete regime change separating us from that era of Nintendo. Furthermore, if something more radical was in the pipeline, all the more reason to save it until the Switch actually does start to flag commercially rather than cut the legs out from under it now. Finally, I maintain that there is still the very strong possibility that Nintendo just does nothing. Again, the Switch is still absolutely killing it month over month and year over year, and until this pattern of them releasing genuine platform-energizing games like Animal Crossing and Pokemon every year or two falls off, they have no incentive to invest in rolling out new hardware and would really be wise to save it until it's needed. At this rate, you could convince me that the Switch could enjoy a 10-year life cycle. Am I committing crimes against hype just by suggesting this? Yeah, probably. But that's never stopped me before, and my mailing address is still somewhere inside this broad scope we typically call reality. So that's what it comes down to. If Nintendo sees the Switch as their 9th gen platform, expect something much more like the new Switch to come along to carry them through the period of time that we're calling 9th gen. If they see it as an 8th gen replacement, an on-the-fly substitute for the Wii U, then something more dramatic might be on the horizon, but still not for some time, and you better believe they'll find a way to make whatever it is work with Switch games. That's all for now. If you like this video, then be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe as it helps the channel out a lot. Until next time, I'm Patrick Mifflin, sounding off.